We're rolling.
We are in the Arctic Circle and we are currently floating on a huge ship called the Greg Mortimer, and we're heading towards the North Pole. As you can see behind me, we have a lot of what we call sea ice. Now, over the course of this lesson, you are going to be researching what sea ice does for the world, how it impacts your life, and what we can do to actually save it in our daily processes from the moment we wake up to the time we go to bed. But I am really fortunate this week because I am joined by Uliana. Uliana is an ice scientist. Sounds very fancy. Tell me, what does an ice scientist do?
Yeah, so the ice scientist studies ice not just in the ocean, as we see right out here, but all around the world. So up in Greenland, Antarctica, the mountains as well. So I also climb to be able to study the ice coming down off of the mountains.
Sounds like an amazing job.
It really is. It gets really cold.
Yep.
You can get lonely, but you see incredible sights, and you're also witness to a lot of the changes that are happening.
Amazing. So tell me, we've got these ice sheets here and some icebergs I see they're coming up, and they're quite small, but there are some bigger ones. Can you tell us, you know, I've seen many an iceberg in my time, how are icebergs formed?
Yeah, so the birth of an iceberg starts actually as snow. So the cold places like here up in the Arctic, down in Antarctica, in the high peaks, snow falls and it sticks around, it doesn't melt. And as that kind of continues to accumulate and press down, it eventually forms into ice. And the ice gets really heavy and it starts to flow downhill until it terminates at the ocean. And then eventually it's like, the ice it's too much, it's too heavy, and it purges the ice.
Wow.
And it gives birth to these little birds all around.
It's like a glacier is giving birth to an iceberg.
Exactly.
And they float off, and that's what we see. So these ice sheets that we see floating here, I mean, how important are they in terms of life? It looks to me like there isn't much life around. Is there hidden life, or are there things happening that we can't see?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so just like we only see the top part of the ice and there's all this ice below, that's what gathers a lot of this stuff called algae. Right? So I like to call it the rainforest of the ocean. So algae actually provides half of the oxygen for our planet. Unbelievable. We think that's the rainforest, and you know, the rainforest and the forests around the planet are super important, but the rainforest of the sea, half of our oxygen, which is why it's so important to life. And little shrimp, krill, will eat that algae.
Wow.
Seals will eat that, whales will eat that, and then polar bears eat. So there's this entire ecosystem, this chain that depends.
So basically we're talking about the fact that we often think that forests provide all of our oxygen, but actually the forest of the sea that you described, the algae or the phytoplankton that lives underneath that ice, that's actually providing the oxygen that we're breathing right now. Yes. That's remarkable.
It is.
So in other words, obviously this ice is very important in terms of habitats, but what else does it do for our planet? What else does it do for everybody around the world? How important is this ice?
Yeah, it's super important, and the reason why is the Arctic can be considered the planet's refrigerator. Okay, so it cools off our planet. How it does that is you see how bright this is, even like how we're squinting a little bit. This ice reflects sunlight back up to the atmosphere. Oh, and we're hitting a piece right now.
Wow, we just crashed into an iceberg.
And so this acts as a reflector, a giant mirror almost. And so instead of heating up the ocean, the ice helps reflect that sunlight away to keep us cool.
Wow.
And once that ice disappears and we have all this dark water, it gets hotter and hotter.
Right, so the Earth will end up heating up. And what happens if the Earth heats up? I mean, if the ice melts and obviously the sun is absorbed by the ocean, what happens to our planet when it heats up?
Yeah, so there's multiple things that happen. So places that get hotter and drier just change entire ecosystems. It changes us on our livelihoods. You know, it's just so warm and we have no water, for example, because of droughts. And then just life is generally unpleasant for humanity. And so there's so many changes that we can't even imagine quite yet. So whatever we can do now to put an end to it is super important.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next question. I mean, obviously we understand that this ice is important, even though it's so far away. I mean, if you're watching this from Bangladesh or the Himalayas or Nepal, this seems very far away, but this ice has a profound impact on the way that we live. I guess, what can we do? What can we do every day as children, adults, parents, families, communities? What can we do to try to help this ice to stay as it is?
Yeah, so what's happening is that the ice is melting because of changes to the air temperatures, and it's coming from us driving, from using our air conditioners, our heaters, all these things, the conveniences of life. Doesn't mean we can't have these things, but let's be moderate in our usage. If there's ways you can walk to places. A supermarket is only a couple kilometers from my home, so I will go on foot and then back and forth, get exercise, clean air. Not only that, but I won't use plastic bags. I'll bring these canvas bags to put the groceries in there. And so that helps because plastic, they have found it in the ice up here, which affects the animals.
Okay, I see. So obviously now we understand the importance of ice and the fundamental role it plays on your lives and what you can do to change the way that you live. Maybe you want to have a walk to school Wednesday or a no meat Thursday, or maybe you want to have banning plastic bags in your school. Okay, so what we'd like to do this week is make an information report on the importance of sea ice and the impact that it plays on your life and everyone's lives around you. This is really, really important. Now, if you feel there's a way that your local community can live differently, if you want to write to a politician, make a phone call to a local minister, or even write to someone really, really influential, this is the week when you can go ahead and do that. Now, before we go, we have Uliana here. Obviously, she is an ice scientist. And I want to ask you a very important question. How can anybody listening at home become an ice scientist? How did you get here today?
Yeah, so for me, it started really early. My parents saw how curious I was as a kid. I was always getting into everything, literally into the dirt and the rocks. And so when I was 6, I saw my first mountains and glaciers. I saw ice cascading and falling in an avalanche, and I'm like, what is that? And I feel like that really imprinted. And my parents just kept fostering my curiosity. I read voraciously as a child.
You read a lot of books.
Yes,
Wow.
I read as much as I could get my hands on about space, science. My parents sent me to summer camps to explore. And then I just was persistent. I didn't have much money growing up. Our family didn't. And so we'd apply for these scholarships and just kept building experience after experience, and then had enough experience built up that I started applying for jobs left and right, and I got to go to Antarctica at age 21. So It took a while to get there, but then that was the start.
So basically the fundamentals are follow your dreams, find your passion, read, 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 and read, and you might end up just like Uliana visiting Antarctica.